Good evening, everyone. I am Rachel Lane, and I'm here representing the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. William Hansard, public historian at the Theodore Roosevelt Center at Dickinson State University. We are delighted that you decided to join us this evening at our virtual Taste of History event to learn more about TR and the food he ate around the holidays, and perhaps to get some ideas for your own holiday dinners. To get the evening started, I'd love for you to drop in the comments where you're tuning in from. We love seeing what places are represented. And since this is a holiday baking themed Taste of History event, feel free to drop in your favorite holiday food as well. So just one moment while I drop that question in the chat. All right, question is in the chat if anybody wants to drop a comment, and we'll read them in just a moment. We'll be your historical guides for the next hour with brief breaks in between the stories for demonstrations of how to cook these recipes, including one demonstration by the library's executive chef, Candace Stock. This month, she's joined by a special sous chef. You'll have to figure out who it is when we get on later in the program. If you'd like to follow along, now's the time to grab the ingredients you'll need. We'll wait just a minute or two. We'll read out some of the places that are represented if anybody's dropped them in the chat, and before we get started. So we'll also drop the recipe card if anyone wants it or needs it for later. So just 1 second, I will drop that in. All right, so I've dropped in the recipe card. All right, so I will go ahead and begin thinking about the holidays and foods that we might enjoy. If anybody wants to drop in where they're tuning in from, feel free. We would love to hear it. All right, so before we begin our presentation looking at how TR celebrated the holidays, I'd like you to think about how you and your family celebrate the holidays, whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or just even winter solstice. What are your family's go-tos for holiday food? Have they changed over the years? For me, pumpkin pie and pecan pie, in honor of my husband, whose birthday is today, were always my grandma's specialty, and I still like to use her typewritten recipes today. But I also like to try new things. The past few Thanksgivings, I've made a healthy green bean casserole that's a lot more labor intensive, but uses fresh green beans and mushrooms, and is now one of my new holiday favorites. As we work our way through some of Roosevelt's favorite holiday foods this evening, we'll see what TR was enjoying both at the family home, Sagamore Hill, which Dr. Hansard will be covering, and in the White House, which I will be covering. We hope by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to find points of connection with TR and the food he enjoyed around the holiday season. So I see that someone is joining us from Montana, and the best holiday food is thumbprint cookies. That's a good choice. If anybody else wants to chime in as the presentation continues, feel free, but I'll now turn it over to Dr. Hansard.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rachel. Happy to be here as always. I jumped the gun on this slide a little bit, but that's all right. Now we're eager to move on, as TR was always eager to enjoy the holidays. So a bit of background before we delve into the recipes and stories from TR's holiday celebrations. The kid at heart that he was, TR enjoyed the festivity of the holiday season, both as a child and as an adult. As TR writes in his autobiography, Thanksgiving was an appreciated festival, but it in no way came up to Christmas. Christmas was an occasion of literally delirious joy. I never knew anyone else have what seemed to me such attractive Christmases, and in the next generation, I tried to reproduce them exactly for my own children. And reproduce those customs he did at the family home of Sagamore Hill. As James Amos, his personal attendant, who later became one of the first Black FBI agents, would write in his book, Theodore Roosevelt, Hero to His Valet, Mr. Roosevelt who really was a progressive in politics, loved old fashioned ways of living. And he loved particularly the old fashioned family customs. And so, long before Christmas, roaming about the estate, he always selected the Christmas log. And then before Christmas, he would go and chop it down himself, and he and the children would haul it into the fireplace. As an adult, one of his favorite pastimes was dressing up as Santa Claus for the local school. According to Amos, for many years it was his custom to act as Santa Claus at public school number 10 in Oyster Bay, where his own children went to school before he became president. He always had a great fondness for that institution, and at these Christmas celebrations would make a little address to the children. My own daughter went to the same school. Now, if you're wondering how far back this custom went, the answer is at least to the Spanish-American War in 1898. As Jacob Riis, a longtime friend of the family and a social reformer, wrote, Mr. Roosevelt made a good Santa Claus, never better than when he was just home from the war, with San Juan Hill for a background. That time, he nearly took the boys' breath away. And now, as we move on to talk about the holidays at the White House, I will toss things back to my colleague, Rachel.
Thanks so much, William. I appreciate it. I also see that we have someone joining us from Northern Ohio. I'm originally from Ohio myself, so pleased that you could join us. All right, so just like Sagamore Hill was quite the festive season, holidays at the White House were quite the festive time. As Edward Stratmeyer writes in American Boy's Life of Theodore Roosevelt, Christmas time at the White House is just as full of joy there as it is anywhere. Stratmeyer notes, the president, in his trips to the woods, has seen the great harm done by cutting down promising evergreens, so he does not believe very much in having a Christmas tree. Now, both Ted and Ethel mention a Christmas tree, which is a cedar, at Sagamore Hill, so I'm assuming that Stratmeyer means that TR didn't cut down evergreen trees. But they did have an evergreen tree in 1902. Archie, one of TR's children, smuggled in a small evergreen tree that he and his younger brother Quentin decorated in the days leading up to Christmas and showed their father the tree on Christmas Day. TR wrote about it in a 1902 letter to James Abram Garfield, a grandson of President Garfield. That was one very festive time. TR was very surprised by it, and I think he was at least delighted by Archie and Quentin's idea to decorate this small tree. As is no surprise, he also received lots of Christmas gifts while he was in the White House, which he sometimes called Christmas remembrances. Now, some of the gifts were typical holiday gifts like food and drink. As one example, Secretary of the Treasury Lyman J. Gage, for example, sent TR a prime roast of prize beef for Christmas 1901. And TR also got lots of different fruits, grapefruit, oranges, and pears, for example. Others sent gifts annually. Now, for those of you who attended our TR Trivia Birthday Edition night, Marcus Braun, who sent TR some red wine that paired well with bear meat for one of his birthdays, also often sent TR wines for Christmas. As he writes in a 1903 letter to TR, true to my custom, based upon the privilege with which you so kindly honored me in accepting a slight annual token of my esteem for your Christmas table, I ventured again to ship to you simultaneously herewith a small assortment of Hungarian beverages with unpronounceable names. TR, of course, also received books, but the books that he received were more often from people who knew him, such as his family or good friends. In 1904, he received the French version of the Song of Roland from his sister Corinne or Connie. In 1905, William Sturgis Bigelow, a prominent American collector of Japanese art, sent TR a book of animal photography on the chance that your stocking is still up. In 1906, friend Henry Cabot Lodge sent TR a first edition of David Copperfield by Dickens, since he knew that Theodore Roosevelt loved Charles Dickens's works. And then, of course, there were always the random and delightful gifts, like the 2 photographs of Abraham Lincoln that TR received. He wrote back to the giver, Emily Tuckerman, who passed along the pictures, and said, "How I wish Lincoln had shaved his face during the presidency, as he did during the time of the Lincoln and Douglas debates. Now, the Roosevelt animals even received gifts. In 1902, Archie made sure that Jack the dog, Tom Quartz the kitten, and Algonquin the pony all had gifts. As TR wrote in that letter to President Garfield's grandson, Archie would no more think of neglecting them than I would neglect his brothers and sisters. Now, with that in mind, I will turn things back over to my colleague, William.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Much appreciated. So with all these things in mind, let's head back to the family home and consider the food that Theodore Roosevelt and his family enjoyed at Sagamore Hill in Oyster Bay, New York, for the holidays. The first food we'll look at this evening was enjoyed not only by TR and his children, but also after his death with his wife Edith, her children, and her grandchildren. Christmas at Sagamore Hill was a big tradition for the Roosevelt family. Various Roosevelt children remembered what Christmas morning was like. His son Ted remembered in his book, All in the Family, that children used to have the stockings before breakfast. And as recorded in a December 1974 article, Visit with TR's Daughter, Ethel similarly remembered that presents couldn't be opened until 7 a.m. The Roosevelts tended to breakfast around 8 a.m. They also both discussed the Christmas tree, which Ted mentions was located in the north room, whereas Ethel remembered, we always used a lovely cedar for our Christmas tree. Now, of course, the holidays wouldn't be complete without traditional holiday food, and for the Roosevelts, that was plum pudding and turkey. And even when TR was in South America for Christmas Day 1913, aboard the Nioak on the Paraguay River, Roosevelt and the other crew members partook in canned turkey and plum pudding. And that was an interesting Christmas for a couple of reasons. Later, Houdini will use his secret knowledge of this moment to play a magic trick on Roosevelt. Not most people know that he was in the Andes Mountains for Christmas that year, but Houdini found out and used it. Really interesting story. Roosevelt ate plum pudding and turkey for his final Christmas in 1918. This was a bright spot amidst a time of physical and mental decline for TR. The Christmas at Sagamore Hill featured a house filled with Roosevelts, including 3 children, Alice, Ethel, and Archie, 1 in-law, Archie's wife, Gracie, and grandchildren for the first time in a year and a half. Quentin had passed away in July 1918 during World War I, and Ted, Kermit, and Ethel's husband, Dick, were still overseas in the war. Even after TR's death in January 1919, his family continued the tradition of plum pudding, as Ted describes in his book, All in the Family. By this time on Christmas Day, it's noon, and we all gather at Sagamore Hill for lunch, where Mother presides over a long table lined on both sides with her children and grandchildren. Great platters of food are brought in. There's a whole roast pig with an apple in its mouth. This year, my youngest wanted to know why the apple. There is cider in tall pitchers. Finally comes a plum pudding burning bravely. You too can make the plum pudding the Roosevelts enjoyed using a recipe from a cookbook found at Sagamore Hill. The directions for Christmas plum pudding read 1 1/2 pounds of raisins, 1/2 pound of currants, 1/2 pound of minced candied peel, 3/4 of a pound of breadcrumbs, 3/4 of a pound of suet, 8 eggs, 1 wine glass of brandy. Stone and cut the raisins, wash and dry the currants, and chop the suet fine. Grate the bread and cut the candied peel into strips. Mix well together and then add the eggs well beaten and the brandy. Stir all together, pour into a buttered mold, cover with buttered paper, tie down with a well-floured cloth, and boil 6 hours. The day it is to be eaten, put again into boiling water and boil 2 hours. For those of you who purchased the ingredients ahead of time to make this recipe live, now's the time to get them out. We're going to be sharing a video featuring a similar plum pudding from the estate of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the Longfellow House plum pudding recipe. And you'll notice it's pretty similar to the ones that the Roosevelts used. So with that, I'm going to play this video for you from the National Park Service, the Longfellow House.
Hi, I'm Kate Hansen-Plass, the Archive Specialist at the Longfellow House, Washington's headquarters National Historic Site, and I'm really excited to be cooking right out of the recipes in our collection. Plum pudding, or Christmas pudding, is a quintessentially Victorian dish. We don't always know what the Longfellows were eating for the holidays, besides a lot of meat, but plum pudding and mince pie are two of the specific dishes that get called out. We know in 1843, Fanny wrote in a letter that she had boiled mutton, roast turkey, a pair of delicious canvas-backed ducks, plum pudding, and mince pie, of course. In that same year, her brother Tom Appleton was away from Boston, but we consoled ourselves by hoping that my brother and sister were together on that day, as he intended crossing the channel to enjoy his plum pudding at her table. So plum pudding is this staple comfort food for the holidays. There are many historic recipes for this very traditional English dish, and I use the recipe straight out of our collection from Fanny Longfellow's household book, which she called hunting pudding. In the recipe, she calls for 8 eggs well beaten with a pint of cream, 1 pound flour, 1 pound beef suet chopped very fine, 1 pound currants, and I interpreted this as raisins, 1/2 pound of raisins stoned and chopped fine. I interpreted that as prunes or dried plums, which I chopped. 1/2 pound of powdered sugar, and 1 large nutmeg. Mix all together with a guile of brandy. Now, the recipe doesn't say to do this, but I'm going to try a fruitcake trick and toss my dried fruit in with my flour. From the dried fruit, I didn't have to do a lot of interpretation in this recipe in terms of ingredients and weights and quantities. The technique was not quite as specific as it could have been from my non-practice in this form of food. Put in a cloth, tie it tight, and boil it 4 hours. I did end up dividing it in 2 because those 8 eggs and pint of cream made a huge batch. So I ended up with one version that I cooked in essentially a pudding basin, a glass bowl covered in parchment, and a watertight cover of food wrap. Whoa, that looks like edible. And in this side, I worked up my nerve, and I put it in a tea towel, tied the 4 corners together. I did try buttering and flouring and dipping in boiling water to try to improve my odds of getting a good turnout. And it actually came out not quite as golden brown, but a nice shape, which is the cannonball shape that's described in Dickens' Christmas Carol. It looks pretty legitimate. Here's the version with the baked in the bowl. It caramelized on the top, which turns into the bottom. It has all of the fruit flavors coming through it. It's good. We'll take a look at the one done in the cloth. But it's also moist. It's a little even lighter. So overall, it was a lot of work. 4 hours of boiling on the stove, steamed up all the windows in the house, and it had a scent that I'll describe as distressingly beefy. But that scent doesn't come through in the final dish. You get mostly the fruit, maybe a little bit of the brandy coming through, not as much of the nutmeg as I would have hoped. Would I have enjoyed it more if I had a cook making it for me and serving it on a nice dish, possibly with brandy alight around it? Maybe. We know Fanny Longfellow wasn't making this herself. It was a tradition that would be served to her. She would enjoy it. The Longfellows would look forward to it, but it's not something they're in the kitchen making. Thanks for joining us in trying to bake historically, and happy holidays from all of us at the Longfellow House, Washington's headquarters National Historic Site.
All right. Well, that was a really fun video. Before I send things back to Rachel, I wanted to make a couple of comments here. Reasons that we chose that video for the plum pudding. One, it's from the National Park Service, and so it's a public domain video that anyone can use and enjoy for any reason. And we really like to highlight those kinds of public resources that are available to all of us. And two, Theodore Roosevelt very much enjoyed the work of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He actually will refer to him as the greatest of all American poets and advocate for a memorial to him. He will receive books of Longfellow's poetry as gifts, so on and so forth. So we thought that was a really interesting and appropriate connection. So now with all of that, I will send things back to Rachel.
Thanks so much, William. I appreciate it. I wanted to call out that we have a couple more people who dropped in the comments where they're joining from. So we have Weibo, we have Minot, and Beulah, and we have Lefsa and Honey Cookies, which are both great holiday choices. And we really appreciate you dropping those in the chat. So I will add, I'm about to get into what the Roosevelt had at the White House for holiday foods, but be thinking if there's any questions you want to ask us about holiday foods. So plum pudding was what the Roosevelts ate at Sagamore Hill for the holidays, but what they ate at the White House was another holiday classic, fruitcake. But it has a special presidential twist. So known as the President's Fruitcake or the President's Christmas Cake, this yearly cake was made by Betty Lyles Wilson, a famous Tennessee cake maker who sent cakes to heads of state and political leaders across the world, including the White House, starting with the McKinley administration. One women's magazine from 1909 recounted how Betty became the cake maker for presidents and kings. According to Betty's recollections, she said, "Some years ago, a friend from my home city was a guest at the White House. She happened to mention to Mrs. McKinley my reputed prowess as a cake maker, and upon her return, by way of providing the reputation she had given me, sent a sample of my handiwork to the president's wife. A very cordial letter came back, and I made other cakes for Mrs. McKinley. Later, I supplied Mrs. Roosevelt with several Christmas cakes." So we know of several Christmas cakes that Betty made for the Roosevelt family. According to one newspaper article from April 1909, which was just after TR left the presidency, Betty supplied the Roosevelt White House with fruitcakes for 3 years. The past 3 years, in fact, is what the article says. So that means that she made Christmas cakes from 1906 to 1907 to 1908. Potentially more, but we know at least those years. And as the article notes, big fruitcakes they were, with wonderful icing and figure creation in sweets. The last one resembled an immense wreath of buttercups and violets. Now, the fruitcake that Betty baked for TR in 1906 made her local news. It says the Christmas fruitcake weighs 15 pounds and is iced with a garland of Christmas roses in Mrs. Wilson's most artistic style. It is packed in a deep white paper box with linings of lace paper and is to be tied with red, white, and blue ribbons. Betty also made that year 5 other fruitcakes for the White House family, but these, however, were iced in holly and cedar wreaths with sprays of red flowers. Now, for the cake, that particular cake, Betty proudly provided more information about this cake in a newspaper article published in November 1907. She said, "I made President Roosevelt's Christmas cake of Tennessee red winter wheat, baked on a national, the asbestos steel range." Now, she might not be so proud of that today. TR remembered these Christmas cakes even after his presidency, writing in a letter published in one of Betty's cookbooks, "Mrs. Roosevelt and I thank you for your courtesy in sending us the decorated Christmas cakes. I well remember their receipt." Now, what seems to be unique about the president's Christmas cake, beyond the ingredients, seems to be the fact that it is iced. As Betty recalled in an interview entitled "How My Cakes First Went to the White House," published in the Atlanta Georgian on January 31st, 1917, "The yearly White House cake has varying designs, each one as lovely as I can evolve. But inside the dress of flowers and leaves and ribbon bows is always fruitcake, with all sorts of good things put into it, and the recipe is called the President's Christmas Cake." Now, I'm sure you can see from the slide that picture there, which just looks like an iced cake, is actually a fruitcake. And I don't know about you, but I have never had a fruitcake with icing before, but that seems to be what Betty did. And Betty's daughter, Mary Lyles Wilson, mentions in a 1926 magazine article how she continued her mother's tradition of baking for presidents and heads of state, and includes the recipe she used, and presumably her mother, for fancy icing, which blends granulated sugar, egg whites, a sugar syrup, baking powder, and lemon juice. Now, the way to make the president's fruitcake is quite detailed, although it is straightforward. It seems that Betty might have made different types of fruitcakes each year, and we know at the very least she decorated the outside differently. Now, we don't know if the recipe that Betty includes in her cookbook and calls the president's fruitcake, which again you can see on the slide, was the one she used for TR's Christmas cakes. But we do know that she used it for TR's successor, William Howard Taft. As she wrote about this particular recipe, which is on the slide, "Last Christmas, the recipe which appears on this page was the basis of a cake which was served to President Taft." We also know it's one that her daughter Mary uses later, so it's a possibility that this was the recipe that the Wilson women used for presidential fruitcakes. So if that's the case, then TR did eat it himself. Either way, it's a fun historical recipe to try if you like fruitcake. So I'll read the directions in depth, and they are included in the recipe card if you decide you'd like to try to make it. So they read, "Get the fruit ready the day before and pour over wine or grape juice. Have almonds blanched and ground and pour over a tablespoonful of rose water. Measure spices, put in cordial, add to this jelly, but do not stir after jelly is added. Have flour browned in oven, cooled and measured. Cream butter and half sugar and beat yolks light with the other half. Add these to butter, then put in cordial, jelly, and spices. Alternatively, add whites stiffly beaten, and 1/2 of flour, then chocolate. Sift flour over top layer of fruit, add to batter, sift again, and so on until all fruit has been added. Put in nuts. First, line your pans with 2 layers of heavy brown paper cut to fit. Take strips of paper the depth of pans and carefully line all sides. Brush paper with fresh melted butter. You may have a little trouble in fitting the side strips smoothly. If so, slash them just enough to get a perfect fit. The pans are now ready for batter, which, of course, should be all mixed. Put this in pans with spatula and smooth in place. When pan is full, decorate top with nuts and fruit. Paste pan on steel or iron griddle and put in oven of gas stove. Fix the rack nearly 4 inches from bottom of stove, and under the rack put a hot pan of water. As this water only serves to keep some moisture in the air inside the stove, it need only be a small vessel. 2 small hot water pans may be used if you like. Turn the blaze very low and keep it so. If you haven't a gas stove, of course, use a range. Put cake pan on griddle and set on bottom of stove with a small pan of hot water on the side. Or you can set the griddle and a pan containing a small amount of hot water. When the cake is in and the stove started, shut the door and do not disturb it for 1 hour. Your cake must stay for 60 minutes absolutely untouched so that it can season. After this, it may be turned occasionally. From 2½ to 4 hours are required for perfect baking. This depends on the size of cake. When you think the cake is done, run a straw from top straight through to bottom. If particles of batter adhere, leave a little while longer, but watch carefully. When done, remove from stove and leave in pan until almost cold. Then, while the cake is still slightly warm, run knife around edge to loosen thoroughly from pan and turn out. 2 or more cakes can be baked at once, as they never burn if care is taken. And care surely must be taken. But if the instructions I am giving you are followed, success will be yours. You will be repaid for your trouble by having a soft, delicious fruitcake that any housekeeper should be proud to offer guests and family as proof of her skill. So, if you're making this recipe live with us, now's the time to get out your ingredients and enjoy watching Chef Candace and her special sous chef, who is her son, Ollie, at work before baking your own. Asbestos steel range not required. So just one moment as I bring that video up.
Pour it in there. All over. Very good. I'm gonna set this aside. Now add the butter to the bowl.
All in?
Yep. Here, let me. You scrape it in there. Mixing, Ollie. I'm gonna add the sugar in there. Push it in your hand. These are duck eggs, and we just want to put the yolks in there. Okay, so we're gonna separate them. So that it all gets mixed. You just push this down the sides so it all goes to the bottom, okay? I'm gonna push this back down. Stir it up again. Okay. Mix some of these things in there. We're gonna strain these off. These are fruits.
Okay.
Okay. Take that off.
What number? 10?
Nope, just like 2.
Okay.
I'm not good at that.
All good. Hold back in place and pour this in there, okay? Slowly. at that. Nice and thick.
Hey!
I know. It's gonna be nice and firm. So here we have our big bowl with our butter and our sugar.
So
And you
how
can
are we
add this one in, Ollie.
How are we doing?
That's our almond flour.
Can I this too?
While you're doing that, I'm gonna grate some lemon zest in there, okay?
Can I?
Do some orange zest.
Can I try?
I'll hold it. You can try. Gotta be careful, you can grate your skin. Okay, that's it. You want to get all the color off the orange. Okay, you keep a stirring. You want to hold this? You're just gonna shake it back and forth slowly, okay? Ooh. Very good. A little bit of this in there too. Scrape some of this into there.
It looks like sour cream now. And the egg whites are moving.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
What do you mean why? Good chips though, right?
Chocolate chips.
We're gonna put some of the batter in here, Ollie, and then we gotta put more nuts and fruit. We just want to do a little layer. We're gonna put some nuts in there too. Sprinkle them around. And use the broken ones because we want the pretty ones for the top.
You go.
Watch out.
smells like meatloaf.
Who's making you fruitcake meatloaf? Don't do that yet.
Meatloaf cake.
Hey, don't do that.
Another day of fruit. I think it will be good.
So I don't know about you, but whenever I see Chef Candace's cooking, I always wish that I had some food along with me. So in any case, I wanted to jump in and say that we had some more people joining us. Bitterroot Valley in Montana, noting that born in New Hampshire, went to college in New York, and said that Sagamore Hill was my place of sanity and serenity and connection to the world of conservation. We love Sagamore Hill and love hearing that you love it as well. California and loves Christmas cookies. And then a call out for Lefsa again. And someone is also joining us from South Dakota. So if anybody else wants to jump in on where they're joining us from or what your favorite holiday food is, it can be a dessert, doesn't have to be though. We'd love to hear it. So with that, I am going to bring my colleague William back to the stage, and we're going to open up the floor for questions. So we appreciate you joining us tonight as we ate our way through Theodore Roosevelt's holiday treats. We hope you learned a thing or two about TR, how he celebrated the holidays, and some historical recipes as you reflect on how you celebrate the holidays and what foods you enjoy. If you'd like to see more virtual Taste of History events, let us know by dropping a comment or sending us an email with the types of foods or drinks you'd like to see highlighted. So something that we've asked a couple times at our Taste of History events is, what recipe are you most likely to try? So I'm going to drop that question in the comments. So if anybody wants to chime in, are you thinking fruitcake or plum pudding? So I personally think it would be interesting, super interesting to try fruitcake that's iced. I don't know how you feel, William. I've never had iced fruitcake before.
No, and neither have I. And I gotta say, I'm actually a little skeptical of it because I'm a big aficionado of fruitcake. Originally being from Texas, some of you who, if you've been to or from Texas who are watching out there, you may have heard of Collins Street Bakery, original deluxe fruitcake. Some of the best that there is anywhere. This stuff gets ordered, shipped all over the world. So I really love good fruitcake. And the texture seems odd to me to have the icing and like the density of fruitcake. I actually think I'd be more likely to try the plum pudding, in part because the video from the National Park Service, her talking about how the scent was beefy, but the
Yes.
taste wasn't, with that beef suet in it. I'm really just curious to see the sort of chemical, magic that happens there that makes it not taste beefy when it's cooked. And the fruits and everything, and it sounded pretty good. So I think that's what I would go with.
I agree with you. I don't know that I would want a dessert to taste like beef, so I would be curious to see how it changed. So yeah, if anybody else would like to drop in what recipe you might be more likely to try. I also kind of suggested this, but I'm curious what people think of iced fruitcake. So obviously, as I discussed, there was great detail in terms of what it looked like. So two of them we know about. One was 15 pounds, which to me seems huge for fruitcake. I don't know, William, being the fruitcake aficionado, if you know differently.
No, that's pretty big.
Pretty big.
Fruitcake. That's like, you're talking like royal wedding size fruitcake at that point.
Well, I mean, it is the White House.
Yeah.
So one had Christmas roses, and then the other one had buttercups and violets. So William, icing aside, for just purely aesthetic purposes, do you think you would rather have Christmas roses or buttercups and violets?
I'm a rose fan. I like roses a lot, and of course, Roosevelt is sort of an easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but for me, that's also another Texas thing, right? Like if I'm gonna ice a fruitcake, I'm gonna put yellow Texas roses on it.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm just a fan of roses. Buttercups and violets are nice too. I'm certainly not gonna, turn my nose away at that or anything. But how about
I don't
you?
know. Do you feel like roses or buttercups or violets? I feel like roses might be easier to pipe, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good question. I know that I couldn't do either one. I'd be asking somebody to help me on that part.
I'm with
So
you. The other
I
thing
can mix
I
the ingredients, but piping the icing, I'm not so sure about that.
The thing I found, so I'm going to add the picture back, is the one that's featured in this image, which is a picture of a fruitcake that was made for President Wilson. Um, Seems very, to me, it evokes like a baby shower. Like that's what it evokes to be.
I was thinking Easter.
Easter. Oh yeah. Okay. I see that too. Like very, very spring-like. Okay. So we have a comment here. We always had a stout hard sauce with our fruitcake. Yes, I agree. That sounds much tastier than icing.
Yeah, and listen, I'll go for like an alcoholic cake, a rum cake, a brandy cake, any day of the week. So that sounds good to me too.
So another thing William and I were talking about before we started our official presentation is we mentioned some of the things TR enjoyed around the holidays. But one of the things I wanted to call out was cherry bounce was something that Dutch Knickerbocker families enjoyed around New Year's. And we know for sure that TR had cherry bounce. Obviously, cherry bounce is more commonly associated with George Washington, I think, but we know TR had some. And he wrote in a letter talking about how he felt quite bacchanalian. So my thought is that it probably had alcohol in it. William and I were talking about TR and how he tried to downplay how much alcohol he drank. And certainly we don't think he was a raging drunk or anything like that. But bacchanalian is not a term I think I would use for a non-alcoholic version of a drink.
No,
I don't know if you have
we
anything
know
to add
for
about.
sure. Like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to talk over
No,
you.
you're good.
I was gonna say we know for sure. Like at state dinners, he drinks champagne. Like the man's not a total teetotaler.
Yeah.
So it would not shock me to hear that he had a hard beverage at Christmas time.
Well, I don't see any other comments, so it sounds like people either really like the idea of iced fruitcake or really don't like the idea of iced fruitcake.
Could be.
But in any case, I so appreciate all of you joining us for our holiday edition of our Taste of History event. And as always, it's such a pleasure to collaborate with Dr. Hansard. And until next time, we'd like to thank you for spending your evening with us. Did you have something you want to add?
I was going to say, before you close out, we'll want to pull up that last slide so that we can show everybody the date for that next Taste of History.
Oh, yes. Perfect. All right. See, this is why I need you on here to help me out, William. Okay. So yes, our next Taste of History event is going to be on Monday, January 26th, 2026. So can't believe we're already headed into the new year. And it's going to be cocktails. So fruitcake and plum pudding is a little bit tricky, I would say, to probably make live, but cocktails you can definitely do. So we're super excited for that. So pencil that in to your calendars. We'll try to offer a mocktail version as well, as we did with a previous Taste of History event for those of you who either don't drink or maybe you're doing dry January. So lots of options there. So I see no comments about iced fruitcake. So I think I'll close things out and thank you just so much for spending your evening with us discussing holiday foods. And we wish you a very happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah. No matter what holiday you celebrate, we wish you the most festive of festive seasons, just as Roosevelt himself would have appreciated. Thanks so much, all, and we'll see you later.